there's a lot of bad places this can go. Now, we already brought down our numbers for 2025 back in December, anticipating that tariffs would be a pretty meaningful drag on the advertising market, and then further brought them down again only a few weeks ago under the same premise, but also adding in the policy volatility is another factor that is negative for the ad market. So we got what we kind of expected, and implicitly we're saying this is going to be a no growth, real growth in economy, elevated inflation. This is exactly what we said for our subscribers and corporate advisory customers who read what we wrote back then. And so that's playing out as expected. But there's a lot of knock-on effects that are just so hard to anticipate, and so many worse scenarios that are, not the base case. The base case was bad, but alternative scenarios are worse. There's not really many upside scenarios as we see it. And so when we think about these far worse downside scenarios, that would just be more of a drag on the overall ad market. Now, that hurts pretty well everyone when we think about some factors like, tariffs on China at the levels that they're at, that disproportionately hurts Amazon and Meta. The elimination of the de minimis exemption disproportionately hurts Amazon. The whole auto thing, well, that hurts everyone. Supply chain disruption, that's hurting right now autos, but it'll hurt everyone. And then tariffs impacting every country just will impact every supply chain. It impacts everyone. So it's kind of hard to say that it's going to be disproportionately one place or the other than on the Amazon Meta angle. Although, again, I think if there is one place where there could be a temporary element to these tariffs, it's there. But by temporary meaning at these levels, I don't think anyone should assume that this is a temporary state of being. Tit for tat is a real thing, and it will play out. Now, that's where this gets interesting. Back to your agency question. So, if the overall ad market is soft, that's not positive for agencies at all, of course. But if we now get to a place where, let's just say, the European Union tries to hit the United States by putting tariffs on services which have not been touched, that's where it starts to get really interesting, not in a good way for agencies. The bright news for agencies, or the good news for agencies, is that because they are human, they're organic, they're very adaptable. And that means that even if one country can no longer service another just as fluidly as they used to, or maybe offshoring becomes a thing in the past, very realistic scenario every company should be planning on, or at least considering. Um, or you're able to shift production in different places. You're able to shift freelancing to different places. Now, the problem is because there's going to be so much policy volatility, it's going to be hard to make investments. That's the bigger problem. You can't make these long-term commitments. So that does mean a lot of, returning labor back to home markets for the most part. I think that's probably the biggest single consequence. But the secondary one, and this is something that I'm still wrapping my head around. If you've listened to me, anyone's listened to me over the last 10 years, I've been arguing the only correct strategy for agency holding companies is the one that we've seen Publicis, Anavas, and Dentsu pursuing. Again, there's other reasons why Dentsu's had their struggles, but they have the right broad strategy, creating a unified monolithic entity, singular brand, centralizing as much as possible. Like that is one of the core reasons why Publicis has done as well as it's done. Uh, Now, the global monolithic brand seems like the right strategy in general, except how about what the news we saw in the last 10 days? On the same day that the United States government in France, through the French embassy, alerted all French companies, hey, you want to do business with the US government, you better not have a DE&I policy. That would presumably include Havas and Publicis, but implicitly it's everyone. The same day, there's also news out of London that TfL, which runs the Tube, one of the biggest advertisers in the UK, kicked Accenture out of a review for not having a DE&I policy. And so what I'm rethinking, and I can't claim to have a firm thought on this, is that if we have policies that are completely opposite, it's not like there's one standard to hit and then you can serve everyone. Like GDPR, just if you operate at GDPR standard, great, you're probably good to go everywhere. This is different. It's like saying if you have GDPR, you can't operate in the United States. So here we're saying to be able to service one country, you're going to have to be completely different in another country. And maybe you can't do both and you have to pick sides. What are the consequences of this? I don't know. This is a new thought, but I think it's a very realistic scenario to think about for global agencies. But again, the good news for them, unlike a lot of globally oriented media companies like the platforms, they're far more flexible, they're far more human, they're far more adaptable because they're human mostly. And so that's actually not a bad place to be in this world.
Right. Is there a silver lining or some positive element that could evolve, perhaps around a particular sector or technology?
Not particularly. No, I think you have to assume the worst and plan around it. I mean, that's literally that you can create your own silver linings. There will be opportunities in this chaos. The worst scenario is to assume that the worst case scenario for any one company is to just take it and just assume that all these bad things happen and there's nothing you can do about it. I don't agree with that premise. Any one company can try to anticipate where the future is going and create contingencies, hedge, make sure that you're able to operate under scenarios that might be, would have been unfathomable years ago. I mean, take for example when the very brief trade war with Colombia in January, where for 6 or 8 hours Trump threatened Colombia with sanctions. I didn't have time to write the note about it, but I almost did. Think about that. Say you're dependent upon offshoring in Colombia. Well, you really like you wouldn't be able to operate if those sanctions actually went into effect. You definitely need, if that's part of your strategy, you need to have a lot of redundancy in different places around the world, or you have to think of a different strategy. You have to plan for that. It's going to be more expensive, but I think the companies that make those investments in hedges and plan for different scenarios and imagine what their business has to look like to thrive as best as possible. That's where there are going to be some good stories for individual businesses. But I think, most businesses will not adapt as well as they should. And so it's not going to be silver lining for most businesses, unfortunately.